Die. Today we have for you the head coach of Gracie Burwood and a black belt in multiple disciplines. A really all-round nice guy, one of the OGs of jiu-jitsu here in Melbourne. We want to welcome to the podcast Robbie Singh. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, no stress at all, man.
If I can't be training jiu-jitsu, I want to be talking jiu-jitsu or drawing jiu-jitsu or whatever we can do to get it out there in the public.
That's so good,
That's
man.
right.
I was just stalking you on Facebook a little earlier, and there's this post which I just need you to decipher for me. In fact, I might just quickly even share my screen because just so people can see what I'm looking at. But let me just check it's a public post first before I go sharing your stuff. But
I think everything on mine is public. It's all good.
Okay, that's fine then. So basically it says, this post doesn't mean much to most, but about 2 years ago, I was unable to get my hips, shoulders, and head to touch the wall due to a hunch I developed from carrying 170 kilos on my frame for a long time.
Yeah. So when I started martial arts at like 10 years old, and at 10, I was already about 80 to 100 kilos. So I was quite an overweight young child. And then by 18, I had hit my peak weight, which was about 170 kilos. I think it was between 170 and 175 was the most I kind of carried on my frame.
Wow.
And that was the same time that I started jiu-jitsu with, just after I started boxing first at 18, and then around 20, I hit my first jiu-jitsu class with Dave Christic, who I stayed with all the way through to a black belt. He like a white belt to black belt, private lessons, everything with him. It was not the easiest martial arts journey, being, 170 kilos. And with that, a lot of injuries come with it, like damage to the knees, damage to the shoulders. But for me, especially, I had developed a large hunch, roundness of the back, just from the body carrying all that forward weight on the belly. And I lost the weight doing martial arts, and especially jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu helped me a lot to lose it, because you can't really not lose weight doing jiu-jitsu, if you're training it right.
Yeah.
But there was all these physical aftermaths, and I had put so much time into training. I train 7 days a week. I at the moment I teach 50 hours a week on the mat. Plus I work a part-time job as well, doing counseling with children on the autism spectrum. So I have a lot kind of going on. And so I was putting a lot of my time into my students and into my work and into my family. And at one point, my wife said, you need to go full-time teaching and kind of take it. I was also working full-time at that time. And she said, you need to really think about becoming full-time. And if you're going to become a full-time teacher, you need to consider yourself now a full-time athlete and a professional athlete, because if you're going to make your family's income off your body, then you need to be more professional about the way that you're doing it. And so one of my students is a very good myotherapist and functional patterns expert. And so I started seeing him just to go like, hey, this is my body. What can I do to make sure that I can still be teaching at 100 years old? And he goes, well, these are the things we're going to do. And we kind of built a plan. But in the initial stages, we did some physical assessments. And one of the simple things he said was squat against the wall and make your hips touch the wall and make your back touch the wall, demonstrate your posture to me. And I was like, man, I can't physically do this. And, 2 years work later, I see him 2 times a week and, do all his exercises every day. And I also use a lot of stuff from Bulletproof for BJJ with James and Joel. Yeah, 100%. And all of our students at our academy get free membership to their program as well online. We make sure we hook them up as well. So we want to make sure everybody's if I'm doing it, if it's good enough for me, then it's good enough for my entire academy. So that's kind of the work that's been done, and I've been able to correct that hunch. And it has a huge impact on your ability to breathe, your ability to maintain positions, ability to keep yourself flat to the ground, but also just my ability to have energy at the end of the day, because I can breathe properly, and while I'm training, to give my energy back to my family when I get home. And the girls, I got 2 young girls, 6 and 8. They want to play games, they want to jump on a trampoline, they want to go, and dad has to be ready to go again when he gets home. He can't just leave it all for the mat.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, 170 kilos though, Robbie. Like, do you mind if I ask how much you are now?
Yeah, so right now I'm 95 kilos. So overall, I've lost about 80 kilos since I proposed to my wife. So what was that? 23, we got married. So 13 years it took me. I've been able to. It took me about 7 to 8 years to lose the weight. And then it's 8 years of maintenance. And, you know, it's just a constant battle you play with. Once you put that weight on, it's very easy to put it back on. So you're constantly playing and monitoring and managing it from here. And apparently, as I'm learning, it doesn't get any easier as you get older to keep that weight off. So you got to really be more disciplined as you get older.
Yeah. And what would you say was the source of, like, obviously we don't want to spend the whole podcast focusing on the weight, but it is an amazing transition, you know, and
100%.
like, how come you got to that point? And then, like, was the turning point your wife? Is that what actually was the catalyst?
No, so I met my wife. We've been together since we were 15. So she just kind of knew me for what I was the whole time.
Wow.
A big part of it was, I think I grew up in the restaurant industry, family business.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to just snack in the back and sneak some ice cream when you're making desserts for other people, and sneak a cake for yourself when you're doing it from it. Soft drinks at your disposal all the time. So it wasn't the healthiest foods that, you know, that you're devouring during that time. And you finish work, you know, because I started working when I was about 10 years old in restaurants. So you'd finish working, you know, like 12 o'clock at night. You'd eat dinner then after you've been snacking all night. Then you'd go to sleep. You wake up 6 a.m. to get ready for school and stuff like that. So it just wasn't a very healthy relationship I had with food, sleep, and exercise, right?
Yeah.
The turning point for me was actually, I was teaching a lot of the karate classes in my club, and I had started boxing and started jiu-jitsu, and I was looking at, I'm in front of the room of an establishment where people are coming to get healthy, and I'm not the healthiest person in the room. So and martial arts is meant to be a transformative experience for people. It's meant to transform them mentally, physically, and spiritually. And I'm sitting in front of the room saying, you don't need to change. It's good enough the way it is, and you'll be okay, right? But it wasn't, because my body was hurting. I wasn't able to demonstrate things I need to demonstrate. When it came to kicks or so forth like that, I couldn't put my body in particular positions for jiu-jitsu. It took me, you know, many, many years before I could even lock up a triangle, because I didn't have the mobility in my hips or my knees, because of the size of my legs and the mobility that I lacked from it to be able to do it. And I was like, this is just the message I want to send, and a message that I'm actually showing doesn't match up. There's an inconsistency and incongruence between it, and it left me feeling uncomfortable with myself. So, you know, at the end of the night, you're the only person who, you know, thoughts or you know, voice is left in your head when you lay on the pillow, and that needs to be the most comfortable voice that you hear. So I need to make that voice comfortable within me.
Jiu-jitsu and martial arts is not only just meant to be transformative, as you were saying, but it actually is, because that's what it did for you. Ultimately, like, you were at a different place in the journey. It was just taking its effect, and then, you know, and then it happened, you know. So
I started karate as a 10-year-old wanting to be a Ninja Turtle, right? So my transformation was never going to happen that way. I'm not going to turn green, so it had to come another way to me. I just had to learn more.
Wow.
And how exactly did you discover jiu-jitsu? How did that come about?
You know, the crazy thing, right? So I was doing karate, really into karate, and then these two dudes turn up in the UFC, right? Lyoto Machida and George St. Pierre, two guys coming out in karate gis, but they're choking people and they're guillotining people. And I'm like, hey, what's up with this, right? And then so I go back into you know, martial arts thinking. I'm like, well, they've haven't fallen into the kind of mentality that a lot of martial artists fall into, which is, I must be loyal to my style and I must be loyal to my teacher. And I was like, and my dad was wrestled a lot in India, and I was talking to him about it. And he was saying, like, you don't, in wrestling, you don't have a coach, you have a head coach, but you have many coaches that teach you things, and you'll go to different villages in India and you'll learn from different coaches, different techniques, and then you go and compete. And he's like, so I don't understand why you think you can't leave your academy and go learn information from somebody else. And I was like, because my teacher says you're not meant to. And he's like, okay, but you're a grown man. Why are you letting another grown man dictate what you can and can't do?
Wow.
And I was like, oh, Dad, like that's a great conversation. I have very good, throughout my life, my dad's been a great source of just moments of conversation where I'm like, yeah, you got a really good point. Like we are adults and we need to adult at some point and make decisions for ourselves. So that's, I first ventured into the boxing. I was like, okay, this is good because I'm getting a more realistic, karate was great as a kid and as a young adult to develop particular skills around discipline and mobility and things. But as an adult, you want to learn to maybe use your body a little bit more for combat. And that's where boxing came in for me. And I went for my first boxing lesson and got my butt whooped because, you know, the skills I'd learned in karate maybe didn't translate the best to boxing. And so that was a real eye-opening experience. And then it just happened that my dad's restaurant was in Baronia, and behind my dad's restaurant was a Taekwondo school. And I wasn't interested in Taekwondo, but all of a sudden this sign popped up in the window, Technique Jiu-Jitsu. And I was like, there's a jiu-jitsu school now right behind my dad's restaurant. What's going on here? So I booked my first private lesson. And then my first private lesson turned to like 3 private lessons a week. And then finally, at that point, I wasn't able to do the group classes because the group classes were on while the busy period of the restaurants were on. So my dad was like, like you can go do those private lessons before the busy part, but when group class aren't too bad. So then I'd say like, I've got to go take a delivery, and I'd sneak into a group class and disappear for an hour. Right. And my dad's like, well, why is he taking so long on this delivery for? It was just around the corner. I'd be thinking,
and you're coming back all sweaty. Yeah. Did he not notice?
Well, what would happen was when it all started to give away was when I'd come back with gi burn across my face. And people trying to
rough delivery, Dad. Rough delivery.
And then it was done. Like from there, he was just like, okay, we'll schedule your interactions with our family business around jiu-jitsu. You're so passionate about martial arts. Let's just make it work for you from here.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that's how I found jiu-jitsu, was like through Dave. Was just he just the happenstance of my restaurant, his location, being back to back, and the way that it worked so well. And that just started a whole journey from there.
Wow. And so was that Dave Christic?
Yeah, Dave Christic. Yeah. Like I said, from white belt to black belt first degree, I was with Dave the whole way through.
Wow.
Yeah. And that kind of came back to me with my karate idea. Was like, although you don't have to be loyal to one person, you should be loyal to one person and do the work to see that journey through.
Very true. We've had, you mentioned the Bulletproof guys, we've had them on, and Dave, we've also had him on the podcast previously. So it's really nice the way the community kind of links back around, comes full circle.
Also,
I think
that, sorry, go on. Kim, you've done
I was just going to say, I really think it is an important thing that like, we saw it happen to traditional martial arts in the 80s and 90s, this segregation that occurred within it. And like, and I think jiu-jitsu is this nice new martial art. We're still the baby martial art on the block. We have this ability to demonstrate. You don't need to have those clicks and those distinguishers. Like the whole talk about previously self-defense jiu-jitsu versus sport, that's gone. Nobody even mentions that anymore. And when it does, it's not even clickbait worthy anymore on social media. It just kind of passes very quickly. We all understand it's all jiu-jitsu. We all do jiu-jitsu. We all have a very similar mindset that we're trying to teach people, this great art that, gives them a set of skills that they never had before. Lets them realize they have this capacity of the human body that they didn't realize they could actually accomplish. And that means that you have very like-minded people that can connect. And when you're willing to connect, you can do amazing things as a group together.
Yeah, what a community, that's for sure. In fact, on that note, side note, like the reason why Robbie's on this show is because his gym, like he reached out, he just basically made a donation. We're raising a lot of money and doing a lot of effort for the Asylum Seekers Resource Centre, and Robbie made a very generous donation through his gym and supported us. And then I was like, oh my God, this guy's a legend. I forgot, I'd seen you around, I've seen you compete. I don't know you personally, but you are like, it's very apparent what a contribution you are to people around you, man. You are giving it back in spades, man. And I really acknowledge
Thank you very much, man. Hey, you were doing something amazing. And I thought, like, when I saw that and you're like, hey, this is a 5-4 goal. I was like, I can help. I can't physically help and be there and do it, but if I can do something another way, then I want to be part of those things. When I see people doing amazing things, I want to make sure that we're able to support it. And like you said, like I've put so much time over the last 8 years into my own academy. I haven't really ventured into other people's academies and put myself out there. And part of it is because I'm a little bit of a control freak and I want to teach every class myself, but I'm slowly creating that separation and realizing that I can't teach 50 hours a week for the rest of my life forever. And I also have some students that are very, very good at teaching themselves, and they need a platform to be able to go and be able to teach themselves. And so I need to step away to start to move that. But that means I can start to do things like when Thiago contacted me about the Boa Super 8 and said, hey, Robbie, do you want to compete? And I was like, I don't know why you think I'd be any good at it, but man, I'm not going to be the guy who sits on my deathbed and be like, I wish I had done that one match on that platform.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to go and do those things now because I have the ability because of all the hard work that I've put into this place.
So good, man. So good.
Yeah.
And just changing tack a bit here, Robbie, can you tell us about your volunteer work that you do in the autism space?
Is it volunteer?
Yeah, so no, it's not volunteer work. It's private consulting. So I started with the goal of being a psychologist when I was in university, and somewhere along the line of my master's degree, I got drawn into something called applied behavioral analysis therapy. So it's a style of intervention for children on the autism spectrum that looks at what skills they need upskilling in, and we learn a way to systematically teach it to them so that they can get the best potential out of any interaction they're having. So it might be we have a toddler who the parents aren't able to toilet train, so we develop a toilet training program, or we have a child who's lacking the ability to develop particular motor shapes to produce language, so we start teaching them how to imitate motor shapes. It might be that they need to learn social skills, or as they get older, they might need to learn how to engage in interpersonal relationships, or how do I pick up girls, or things like that. And whatever skill it is, the family comes to us, and we have to develop a program on how to give them an idea of what those skills could be, what the appropriate skills, what the inappropriate skills would look like, and go through that and develop these systems with the family. So I've been doing that for 17 years now. Yeah, 17, 18 years. I tried to leave it to go to the academy full time, but there's just some families that I've been working with for so long that, there's kids that I've started with at 3 years old who had no language, had very limited interest in social endeavors with any other kids or anything. And now they're independent in high school. And I just see them once a week just to top up some skills or observe them in the classroom and make sure they're still on track. And kind of their journeys where you've been with somebody and seen them develop across their lifespan, where you want to see those kind of cases through to make sure that they do completely get that best outcome that they're looking for. So it's a very rewarding job to kind of be in, and a very rewarding field to be in. And it's very challenging. It comes with their challenges and so forth. But I think engaging in that makes me a better teacher here, because I understand how to interact with kids a very particular way, and how to teach kids a very particular way, and how to make connections with people based on that role that I've been in for so long.
Yeah, actually, I was wondering that, like the relationship of the two different distinct but still connected areas of teaching. Like, does one for the other, or
applied behavioral analysis therapy comes from a teaching psychology background and a positive behavioral background. So it's all about how do I motivate people to achieve what they need to achieve, is that style of psychology. So it's very much about like reinforcement systems, effective communication. And so it just translates so well to teaching jiu-jitsu, because we're all about trying to maintain people's motivation to be on the mat, how to effectively correct their errors in the moment so that they don't feel like they don't have the capacity to learn the skill. How do you actually physically prompt and verbally prompt people in a way that makes them have their own agency over their own training and accountability for their actions, and realization that they're doing it correctly. So a lot of effort a lot of the skills that comes across from teaching psychology was it for me to transfer once I started teaching myself.
Amazing.
Yeah, it becomes that thing of like, when you know the way well, you see it in all. It's kind of like when you really develop that skill of teaching, you start to implement into anything. I maybe teach a little bit too much, that it frustrates my wife when we're at home, and she's like, I don't need you to teach me how to heat the stuff in the microwave. Like, I don't need to be walked through it. Don't take your hand off me. I don't need to physically be prompted through it from here. I'm like,
okay. You mentioned like your academy. How has that been for you? So the last 8 years, obviously the last couple of years have been pretty tough.
Yeah.
How has it been for you as an academy owner from like the beginning through to now?
Yeah. So I opened my academy as a purple belt to striper. And I remember that was the most daunting thing. For me, it was my wife was pregnant with our first daughter. And we had she had that conversation with me where it was, you've always said you wanted to teach. you put a lot of effort into your training. You train 7 days a week, multiple hours a day. What's going to be the outcome of this? Like, are you just going to be a mat rat, or are you at some point going to pull the trigger and actually, go for your dreams of opening an academy? And I said to her, well, if you support me with it, let's start small. I'll rent a little bit of space at the karate school that we're doing, take the hours. And I had the hours that Sunday mornings at 7 o'clock, Saturday morning at 8 a.m., Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, whatever they could spare, I took for the first bit. And we went from a point where we had 2 people on the mat. In our women's only class, it was my mum for the first year. Because that's all that I could get so coming cool. into it. I know it's like that was it. That's how we made it work. But I am very tenacious when it comes to achieving my goals. And so if it was just my mum in the class for 1 year, I knew at some point somebody else would come out, and I knew I'd come with a strategy on how to get somebody else in there. I just got to keep showing up. And if I keep showing up, people will show up. And if people show up, they'll get other people to show up, because I'm going to put the effort in when they come in to give them the best class that they can have. And so, it took a while before it got traction. But it was fun. It was a fun journey to start, right? Like that anxiety of going through. Maybe I didn't pick the best time to start an academy, with my wife being pregnant and having a baby 6 months later, and her needing some support with the child. And I'm like, oh no, I've got to go teach classes now. So we probably could have picked that a bit better. But like we worked through those kind of hurdles, and I think that's just made us such a stronger unit, understanding our goals and what we're trying to achieve, and why we cherish it so much, because it's been so hard. Once the classes got big, like we were in a space that was less than 100 square meters, so about 80 square meters, and we were starting to get up to 40 people in a 8 a.m. Saturday morning class. And so a time when nobody's meant to be coming to do classes because it's too early in the morning, and we're packing a mat out from here. And so I got asked to leave the karate school that I was at. And so we were given very short notice to be able to find another location. And you got to get council approval and all these kind of things and make it work. But we were given a time frame that wasn't realistic. But like I said, I'm tenacious about what I want. So we made it work, right? And then, we had 24 hours to fit out the building and then switch from the location we're at to where we're in and get everything running. And we did it, right? And it's just, you make the things you want to, if you're willing to, you can make what you want happen. And so we did that. And then along the way, we joined Henna and Huron with Gracie University. And then that's just kind of helped me find my voice and connect with kind of back to my traditional roots in martial arts, and then have that mentality of having a curriculum and trying to put things through, and just having support of like mentors that help me kind of with my goal and with my vision of how I want to communicate jiu-jitsu to people. But it's been amazing. Like the ride that's gone through. I always say this, like I was saying this to my wife the other day. I was the 170 kilo teenager doing martial arts who everybody made fun of, laughed at because I couldn't do the actions. And then the moment I went and competed in front of 600 people on a live stream with hundreds of people watching, my daughter sitting in the front row, it was kind of like I was not meant to be the guy who was meant to be able to do that. Right. I was meant to be the kid who got laughed at and was meant to walk away at some point because I just couldn't do it. But I'm still hanging in there and making waves.
Man, I love that. Really reminds me of my drinking past, because my kids don't remember me with a drink in my hand, and I was such an unhealthy guy. It's been like 6 years since I had a drink now or something like that.
Congratulations.
Thanks, man. And it wasn't destroying me, but it certainly had taken a lot, from me. I hadn't achieved things because it was suppressing me. It was suppressing my self-expression. And I feel like this is the same thing for you. Your kids probably don't know what Robbie Singh was like in that previous version of himself. They just know this rock star of a dad who contributes to everything and does stuff. So awesome stuff.
That's the crazy thing, right? Because I walked off that match at Bowl Super 8, and I was worried about what their reaction was going to be, right? Like they just saw dad go on, and I lost the match, and And I come out and they're like, have you seen the red velvet couches in the bar area? And they're like laying on them, and they don't care about that stuff. Like, they love you no matter what.
Yeah.
What my daughter came back the next day was, where I'm dropping off her at school and I'm handing her over to the classroom teacher, and she's like, my dad was in an arena like the UFC yesterday,
Yes,
and everyone was cheering for him. And I was like, that's it. That's the impression she has in her head. That, you know, like the thing, yeah, and that's all that matters, because they see all the work that I do, and they see sometimes I'm at home and I'm body's beat up and things like that. I'm having to do a lot of rehab and stuff like that. And for them to go and have a moment where they get to see the appreciation and the crowd reaction and stuff, and they're like, oh man, this all does mean something a little bit bigger than maybe we're aware of right now. And then they appreciate it more from there, and they appreciate the efforts that they see me putting into everything.
Absolutely, man.
For sure. I mean, I often say to people, especially around competition, you get very in your own head, and you really feel, I don't know, you put a lot of pressure, or I know I myself do, and a lot of other people seem to put a lot of pressure on themselves. But the reality is, people don't really care how you do. Like, you care in yourself. And what you were saying about your kids, it's so true. Like, people don't. It was
so funny, but because I was watching back the footage, and I remember, like, I was super focused walking up the rampway, walking up. I have my little routine that I've always done since I competed, where I walk and I stomp and I go, and then I made eye contact with my daughters. And I started to cry. Like, you see, I sent them a little love heart, and I pointed at them, and I'm like, I lose my complete composure. And I'm like, I'm meant to be doing a match now. I'm like, oh, no, get my head back. I was like, it's done. Okay, let's go from here. But to me, my favorite part of the entire experience now is that on footage, you see, I say this all the time. And when we were training before the match, I was like anybody can call themselves the baddest man on the planet. I'm the daddest man on the planet. And then the moment on the moment when it actually counted, I lived up to what I said to everybody, because my girls were more important to that moment, because I said I wasn't going to look at them. I wasn't going to lose my composure. And the moment I saw them, I still had to be like, I love you guys. What's up? And, you know, and then that was it. So,
and you might also be the sunniest man on the planet, because who has their mum on the mats for a year, right? So, so what I want to know is, like, what does that do for your connection with your mum? Like, that is an amazing thing to share with your mother in a
it was super cool.
Yeah.
It was a super cool experience to have it, because then your mum's advocating for you as well, right? Like, she's telling her friends about it. And that was very cool. But also just to see your mum develop her own confidence in her own body, like you know, like, I think my mom's 60 now, so she would have been about 53, and never engaged in any like, from my childhood to now, I've never seen her engage herself physically, not in any sport, bike riding, anything like that. She's a very much about just being homely in that situation. And to see her realize she has the capacity to do things with her body, it was a very rewarding experience. And it did a lot for our connection, because, you know, like, she sees her experience of jiu-jitsu prior to that was going and watching me compete at blue belt and purple belt and stuff like that. And she's like, you know, this, you want me to do this? And I was like, well, no, I've got this idea of introducing, like, no rolling in the first 6 months of your training. So you'd just be doing technique, and I'm just going to teach you drilling skills and so forth. So how are you to, like, let's give this a go, and let's see how you enjoy it. And if I can get you, a 53-year-old lady, enjoying the experience, then maybe this is actually going to work for everybody along the way.
Amazing.
Yeah. And you've got daughters as well. They train as well, Robbie?
Yep. My daughters train 4 times a week. They're on the mat, they're rolling, they're having fun. My biggest thing, and I've said this, my academy needs to feel like a very homely environment, because I don't want to be the martial arts teacher who can't teach my own kids. Because I feel like that will be one of my biggest, if I can motivate, you know, 1,000 people to turn up to our academy a week, but I can't motivate my own kids to turn up, I'm not doing something right. And so I need to make sure that the environment that I had created an environment where my girls want to feel comfortable training all the way through to the teens. I don't mind if they lose their connection with martial arts at some point. That's not what I want, but I want them to be able to at least have a foundation where they realize that they have the capacity to defend themselves. They have the ability to defend themselves. And at any point they want to come, there's a comfortable environment for them to return to when they want to train. Because the reality is, kids drop in and out of things all the time. I'm just lucky that I've been able to sustain it for as long as I have and keep their interest still sparked in it from here. my daughter says, like, one of her goals is to become one of our women empowered instructors when she turns 16. And then on the flip side of it, like, our average women's only class averages, 40 women at the moment a class. And what it means is that my daughters have 40 female role models that are around them all the time, that are showing them, women can do challenging things, women can do jiu-jitsu, women can roll, women are funny, women are smart, women have a different enjoys that they have in. So my girls have this own tribe of women that are modeling for them all these different facets of life. And that just means so much to me as a father, because I can only model so much for them, and I can only allow them to connect so much with what I do, because I'm dad. And sometimes I feel unnatural to them because of how much I do. But when I can connect them with the general population and let them see what they're doing, and that they're doing amazing things too, then they go, well, it's not just dad. There's lots of people out there. It's not just mum. It's like the community can do amazing things. And I have a community that will support me to do amazing things as I get older.
How do you?
I think that as a female in jiu-jitsu, what's so amazing about it, and especially for younger females, is that it shows you what your body can do rather than how your body looks. And I think, it applies for males as well, that jiu-jitsu is, and that can sometimes be a bit overwhelming for people when they first start, because it's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all approach. Like, tall and lanky is going to have a different game to someone who's short and stocky. So that's what's so beautiful about it for females, especially girls, heading into the teenage years, to know that, like, look what my body is capable of. And it doesn't necessarily matter that it's not as aesthetically pleasing, because that is unfortunately the reality of what women are kind of on the receiving end of, that it's about how your body looks. But jiu-jitsu is about, no, look at what my body can do. Isn't that amazing?
That's such a great way to phrase it. I love that. I love that. Look at what my body can do, not look at what my body looks like.
And also, though, what I think you just pointed to, Kim, which I totally agree with, is it's actually good to have a different body. Like, girls and boys tend to want to have the same body as everybody else. But by having a different body and then being able to use those levers and things differently, you start to actually fall in love with your differences in some way,
That's right. And those differences are the things that cause problems for your opponents when, you have to factor it in. Like, suddenly I've got a 6'6" beanpole. How do I deal with this person?
This
versus someone
in situations that you just can't match, guys.
I think that's one thing, right? Like, you see a lot of people leave other martial arts very after a few years. The average dropout rate for any martial art is 18 months. And in jiu-jitsu, the average dropout rate is 9 months, is the benchmark for somebody to leave jiu-jitsu from starting, right? But for me, jiu-jitsu is so mentally stimulating because of what you just said. There are so many different body types to work with. And I could have the best triangle setup in the world on stocky people with long arms, but then I get some long torsoed person and that setup doesn't work anymore. And now I got to problem solve on the fly. And it's just so mentally stimulating because of things like that.
And I think Joe Rogan called it high-level problem solving with dire physical consequences.
Yeah, it's much better than what my dad says.
Pretty accurate,
My dad rocks up to the house and he's just like, how's the simulated murder factory going?
I love it.
That's not what I do, Dad. I transform people's lives.
Wow. Okay, I like that. I've got one more question, and we're almost out of time. And so we've got 2 minutes 53 left. But I'm really fascinated to know, like, how you keep your kids. Like, it's a conversation for parents. When the kids don't feel like it, how do you handle your kids? You know what I mean? Do you just go, okay, no problem? Or what do you do?
Do you know what? Like, so my thing is we have a routine. So like you train Tuesdays and Thursdays. If they legitimately, like, they're fatigued from school, I can see it in them from here. I'll suggest it before they even say, I don't want to do it. I was like, hey, you look a little bit tired today. Do you want to take today off?
No.
I know you're going to train another 3 times this week. Wow. And they'll be like, no, I'll give it a go. Right. Or they'll be like, no, okay, like today I don't feel like it. Or if a birthday party comes up or something, and I'm like, hey, you're going to miss training this week because you got a birthday party on the weekend. That's super cool, right? And just let them know it's okay. I mean, because we miss training as well as adults, right? Whereas most adults, like, you need to do this. And I think the most important part is not the getting to the mat. I think it's how you hop off the mat. And most parents forget that at a kid's age of martial arts, like Chael Sonnen said it best, I never let a child compete until the age of 12 unless they sit there begging me to do it, because there's no need for them to compete. What they need to do is have a connection and an understanding that martial arts is enjoyable. The people in martial arts are fun. I have a rapport with my instructor, and I like the place I turn up to train. And 9 times out of 10, you build a fantastic environment for kids to come and train, and then the kid hops off the mat and the parent goes, you weren't paying attention. Why didn't you get the technique right? Why didn't you? And so I have to coach parents to be like, your kid comes off the mat and just say, you looked like you had a fun time.
Wow.
And if you can just plant that seed in your kid's mind every time they hop off the mat, I'm so proud of you. You were smiling that whole class. I'm so proud of you. You looked like you were having fun, right? That kid is going to want to turn up next time, because in their mind, the seed's not being planted. Oh, I can't do this because I can't pay attention, or I can't do this because I didn't do the technique right. They're just going to think, I can do this because it's super fun and I want to be there to do it. And that's how you keep your kids engaged in martial arts.
Amazing note to end on, brother. This is inappropriate, but I love you. I love you, man. You're amazing. Thank you for coming on the show.
It's the ball tribe, man. Like we just have to support each other.
Oh, font of knowledge. Better come back.
All right. Yeah, thank you. I feel really energized. That was awesome. Thank you, Robbie. And we'll have this out in a couple of weeks. If you could share it, that would really help grow our audience.
100%. Would love to. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
You're welcome. See you.
Right. See you guys.
Bye.